On November 24, 1971, a man wearing a dark suit and a thin black tie walked into Portland International Airport and bought a one-way ticket to Seattle. He gave the name Dan Cooper. To the ticket agents and his fellow passengers, there was absolutely nothing remarkable about him. He was quiet, polite, and blended perfectly into the busy holiday travel rush. He boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305 and took a seat near the back of the cabin. The flight crew served drinks, passengers settled in, and the atmosphere was entirely routine. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a folded piece of paper to a flight attendant. Assuming it was a businessman slipping her his number, she dropped it unread into her purse. By maintaining the appearance of an ordinary, unbothersome commuter, he completely bypassed any initial scrutiny. No one else on board had any idea he was already moving the pieces into place for a massive heist. Cooper leaned close to the flight attendant and whispered she had better look at that note. He told her he had a bomb in his briefcase. The message inside relayed a highly specific set of instructions for the captain. Cooper demanded $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting on the runway in Seattle. The crew immediately radioed air traffic control. The FBI was brought in, and authorities quickly agreed to fully cooperate with the demands to ensure the safety of the 36 civilians on board. Several hours later, Flight 305 touched down on a wet Seattle tarmac. The passengers were released without a scratch, while the cash and parachutes were brought aboard. By requesting multiple parachutes, Cooper implied he might take a hostage with him, preventing the authorities from shooting him out of the sky. He had successfully cornered the government into financing and equipping his own getaway. This 3D flight model shows the specific trajectory Cooper demanded. With the plane refueled and only the crew remaining, he ordered the pilots to take off and trace a path south toward Mexico City, holding at an abnormally low altitude of 10,000 feet. He also instructed them to keep the landing gear partially lowered. This created intense drag, forcing the Boeing 727 to slow down to around 170 knots. Outside the cabin, the conditions were hostile. The aircraft was cutting through a heavy storm over the forests of the Pacific Northwest, surrounded by freezing temperatures and pitch-black skies. Right around 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit, signaling that the aft air stair had been lowered. Minutes later, the pilots felt a sudden, distinct upward shift in the tail of the plane. Those instrument readings painted a clear picture. Cooper had stepped off the rear ramp and dropped into the freezing night, taking the heavy bag of ransom money with him. Inside the cabin, he had dictated every move and outsmarted the federal authorities. But the moment he let go of the stairs, he surrendered all control, placing his life entirely at the mercy of gravity and the freezing rain. The moment the plane landed, the full weight of the federal government mobilized. The FBI launched an expansive manhunt, officially designated as NORJAC, short for Northwest Hijacking. Agents pored over the evidence, pulling hundreds of fingerprints and interviewing thousands of suspects. This visual database illustrates their primary strategy for tracking the cash. Before handing over the money, authorities had systematically recorded the serial numbers of every single $20 bill in the ransom. On the ground, search parties spent years combing through the suspected drop zone. They trekked across mountains and rivers, but the rugged terrain yielded absolutely no physical trace of the hijacker. Despite one of the most extensive deployments of resources in American history, agents found nothing. The sheer vastness and dense geography of the Pacific Northwest proved entirely impenetrable to the tracking methods of the 1970s. The only physical break in the case came from entirely outside the FBI. Nearly 9 years later, an 8-year-old boy digging in the sand along the Columbia River uncovered several bundles of decaying paper. When authorities examined the muddy stacks in 1980, the serial numbers matched. This fraction of the ransom remains the only confirmed physical evidence ever recovered from the hijacking. This discovery fueled 2 distinctly opposite conclusions. The first is that Cooper survived the fall, losing a portion of the cash upon impact, and successfully vanished into a new identity. The second conclusion is visualized on this topographical map. It suggests the extreme weather and dark descent killed him, and over a decade, the local watershed naturally washed the decaying money downstream to where the boy found it. Without a body, without a parachute, or the rest of the money, the trail went completely cold. After 45 years of dead ends, the FBI officially suspended their active investigation in 2016. Cooper stepped out of an airplane and vanished into the atmosphere. He committed an incredibly high-profile crime, triggered a massive federal response, and managed to leave behind a permanent, unsolvable puzzle.